All right. Thank you all for participating. We're so glad to have you here on this beautiful morning, and thank you so much for entering your answers. And what we want to do this morning before we do our formal introductions is just kind of review some of these answers. So I'm just going to read some of these out loud. So it's expensive, it's for the wealthy, it's a tool to exploit, hard to get credit after, a great tool for ones with enormous debt. And let's see, both sad and a relief based on personal experience, last resort, long-term damage to the credit, embarrassing, people can judge you based on their opinions or thoughts. It's a valid option. I don't like hearing of people trying to use bankruptcy to avoid changing their spending habits and learning to be more responsible for their money. Let's see, bankruptcy for medical costs, last resort option. Let's see. Don't have an active fear. I'm sorry if I'm missing all this. This is a lot of great answers. I just wanted to just do a cursory review of these. Education loans are not dismissed under bankruptcy. Yes, that is true. Exploited by large businesses to get out of paying people. Great answers. So bankruptcy is a tool for a fresh start, and it's actually codified in the Constitution and affirmed by the courts. The issue of debt and bankruptcy is loaded with shame and judgment because our society focuses on the personal responsibility narrative. So it's important for us to examine our own biases and where they come from to be able to serve our clients well. And I just want to say, so again, I'm so glad to be here with you all today. My name is Julie Wong, and I am a program consultant working with neighborhood partnerships.
Awesome. Thanks, Julie. Good morning to everybody. Welcome to the Community of Practice, the IDA FE standards. We're looking to jump into topic 7, looking at debt repayment. I'm Randy Cordine, pronouns he, him. I am IDA program training specialist, and I want to give Luke an opportunity to introduce himself, and we'll go over the scope of this series and lay down some housekeeping and jump into the content. Luke?
Yeah, hello everybody, Luke Bonham, also he, him pronouns, work for Neighborhood Partnerships in the IDA program as IDA program manager. And I'm really excited that later this session, I'll get to interview Demas and Mallory from Warm Springs. So you'll get a chance to meet them later as some practitioners who are bringing some insight to this session. So just a quick preview of that will be coming later this session. So don't leave at the break. When we break, you got to come back to hear them. Okay, back to you, Randy.
For sure. That's a highlight and something to look forward to. So the scope of this series, we've been looking to build connections and collaboration between other IDA staff from across Oregon, refresh our understanding of core content from the standards, and practice shifting the narrative and the context of our work, and explore some of the ways to incorporate economic literacy as outlined in the IDA FE standards. As always, in our community of practice, we want to be able to create a brave space to have courageous conversations about racial justice and equity. So we enroll Glenn Singleton's community agreement protocol. The community agreements which we'll lift up are to stay engaged, which is to engage tension, but not to indulge drama. We'll speak your truth responsibly. Remember, there are multiple truths and others' truths may not be your own, so be open to that growth mindset, be open to learning and creating the brave space. And lastly, confidentiality. So take the lessons, leave the details. And then,
sorry about that. Today we're focusing on topic 7, repaying debt. And we've invited staff from Warm Springs to talk about the debt reduction asset-specific curriculum and their approach to working with clients. And as always, we'll spend some time learning and reflecting on the economic systems that we all operate in to better understand the complexities of these systems. We believe that this will strengthen the way we approach IDA financial education. And the images that you see on the screen are pages from the complete IDA FE standards, which we'll encourage you to review if you have not yet seen those. And then they can be accessed at the link that we're putting in the chat right now.
Randy, you're on mute. I think you're taking this one.
Jokes. I was all talking, nobody heard me. So just laying some container work for how we approach small group conversations. I know we have some new folks joining us and some that have been on this journey with us. So just want to make sure we're setting down protocols. So the way we approach small group conversations and the guidelines that we have is we ask for volunteer small group conversation leaders. And that role is basically just providing a guide rail to try to keep the group on topic. Utilizing silence as a tool. The role is not to fill the space, but to bring forth other ideas. If there's multiple questions, it's trying to just make sure that things are getting addressed, so staying on task. Make sure there is one person in the group that's ready to share out if that's asked, and someone to maybe collect notes if that's asked, and then try to phrase questions in different ways to elicit responses if there is some delay just in the conversation or engagement. And as always, decide on someone to report out when we come back to the larger space. So this is our small group conversation leader protocol.
So we're going to do a small group activity right now. And in your small groups, you'll do self-introductions with your name, your organization, and your role. And then as a group, review the list of expenses and discuss which expenses or debts you would prioritize over the others and why. So you should assume that all non-essential expenses have been eliminated and all reasonable options for additional credit or income have been exhausted. You'll have 10 minutes for this activity, and then we'll debrief as a large group. There's nothing for your group to produce, so we don't need a list from you. We just want you to have a good conversation on identifying and discussing which expenses or debts you would prioritize over others and why. And when we come back to debrief, we'll talk about what your group agreed or disagreed on. So you'll find in the chat box a link to a Google document. And so before you go into your rooms, definitely click on that link. Once you leave the room, the link won't be accessible to you. So go ahead and click on it now. If you get to the room and you don't have the link, then you guys can share the link with each other through your small group chats. Are we back? All right.
Yeah.
Welcome back, everybody. We're going to spend a few minutes debriefing your conversations. And so feel free to just unmute yourself and speak up or type your answer into the chat box. But let's start with, where did your group agree? What did, as if there was a consensus in your group, what were the items that folks said, or the bills or the debts you should prioritize? Housing was number one. Okay.
Yeah, in our group, our main consensus was rent or mortgage being number one. And then everything after that will depend on what the client situation is, what they prioritize, where they live, what options are available in their communities. And so we kind of agreed rent or mortgage should definitely be priority one. And after that, it really depends on their unique situation.
Okay. All right. So anyone else had a different answer? Did anyone not put rent or mortgage? Okay. All right. So let's move down to the things that people kind of had disagreements or debates about. What were some of those items or expenses?
childcare was something that came up in our group. Some thought it was more important. And if I'm speaking out of turn, you guys let me know. But some thought it was more, it should go up above groceries.
Mm.
And then others of us thought, groceries are pretty important. And not that childcare isn't, but if you food is a basic necessity, and if you're hungry, you can't think beyond that because you're hungry. So yeah, that came up.
Yeah, I think that was, we didn't have much debate, but that was probably the only debate we had was the childcare and prioritizing that. And like the comment said there, it could depend on where we live at too, and our organization. We're lucky enough to have work from home, and we can keep our kids at home if we need to. Not everybody's like that, so.
Yeah. So was it a matter of, like having other resources to, like, if you can't spend money on food, that there may be resources in the community where you can access free food? Was that part of the debate?
I know, I'm sorry. That debate didn't come up in our group, but it was in the back of my mind because we have probably 4 or 5 local food banks. So, and for a small rural area, that's kind of a lot. But I didn't bring it up, but that is an option, I think, and I'll let other people talk.
Yeah, I think so. I was in the group with Michelle, who popped that comment into chat. And so we did talk a lot about situation. If you are commuting to work, then your car payment or your bus fare, is probably a lot higher on the list. If you're working from home or you can work from home, then maybe your car payment is lower, but your insurance or your internet bill is higher. If you have food resources in the community, if you can access them, maybe grocery is lower. And it's also not uncommon for a lot of families to, maybe make sure that they're spending groceries to feed the kids, but the adults are going without. And so those are choices that get made as well. I will say we didn't explicitly talk about pet food, but I also feel like that's one, kind of like making sure the children get fed, that a lot of, again, if there's a resource in your community where you can get pet food, that's different. But a lot of people, because pets are family and they don't understand what's going on and they can't make that choice for themselves, maybe might reduce pet food costs as much as possible, but will continue to keep buying pet food, but maybe buy less groceries for the adults in the household.
So let's move to the third questions. How did values inform your individual priorities when it came to making these decisions? Leo was mentioning earlier that, it was, if you need to drive to work, then you prioritize that. So I just want to differentiate between values and needs, and how sometimes those two things don't necessarily match up. Like sometimes you have to do things that aren't aligned with your values because you have a need. Does that make sense? Okay, so.
I like this question because it's a hard one. I've had clients where, like, I'm thinking of a client right now, and for her, food is a very important value, like to have fresh produce, to have good quality meat. That is something that she just really, it's probably one of her very top values. And so what she spends on food, when I look at it, I'm like, oh my gosh, you could reduce that so much. But I also acknowledge like, this is her value, and she's not in a situation of like foreclosure or anything like that. It's more of like talking through, she wants to be able to save more for purchasing a home, and how do we balance that value of like, this is a lifestyle that is very important to you, that is not going to go away the second you buy a home. So how do we honor that value while still helping, like looking for room to provide for other values, like the value of home ownership? And that's hard.
Yeah. Thank you, Michelle, for sharing that. It's so powerful. It's so important to acknowledge, that people have different values and priorities. And so we're going to share with you some guidelines that the financial industry recommends. They're going to pop up on the screen, but we're also going to share this link. But as you glance over this list, you'll see that like everyone here, they prioritize a roof over your head. But then you'll notice as the list goes down, it's pretty much you can look at this list, and I don't necessarily see correct or incorrect, but it's a list built to preserve a person's ability to keep generating income. Okay, so every list a person can generate will be framed through their needs and their values. And so the list may be different depending on a person's circumstances and their values. But in general, if you'll look at this list, there's also just very few immediate consequences to deprioritizing unsecured debt. Long term, obviously, they're going to have an impact if they have too many late payments or delinquencies on their credit, which may prevent them from buying larger purchases down the road. But when you're in that immediate situation of having to figure out, what to prioritize, it's important to think about both values and needs. They don't always match up. Okay. Any questions or comments about the activity or this list? And certainly this list is available for you to use as a reference, but we're not advocating it as a hard and fast rule. Like this isn't necessarily something that we're saying, hey, when you talk to your clients, you should have them follow this list as a way to prioritize, because for some people, maybe their value isn't a roof over their head. Maybe they value more like freedom and just like being mobile. Maybe they want to live the van life. And so they don't, have the aspiration of staying in one place for a very long time. Okay. So those come from deep conversations you have with your clients.
Yeah, I think another observation just that everybody put, I think we have a lot of housing providers in this space. So everybody put housing as first, but the idea that somebody may not prioritize housing if they think there are resources to help, or if there actually legitimately are, right? There was a lot of subsidy for housing around the pandemic, right? Rent assistance. And so it's just interesting that people are navigating and negotiating within their expenses what to prioritize, sometimes based on values, but also maybe based on available resources or assumption of resources, right? I think that's just a fascinating thing to consider. And how do we bring, if we are in the space of connecting people to rental assistance, how do we not bring our judgment about them prioritizing other things over their rent or their mortgage? We have mortgage counselors, foreclosure counselors, right? And I think part of what we want to talk about later is, with Warm Springs Community Action Team, they have some experience doing IDAs for debt repayment. And there's an asset-specific curriculum that we're going to show you and interview them about some of their approaches as they work with clients. But we're going to kind of jump back now to the topic of bankruptcy. And the reason is because, you know, as our opening activity, you know, brought up, there's a lot of different assumptions or feelings or personal experiences about bankruptcy. And we want to make sure that there's understanding about what the role of bankruptcy is, but also somewhat of a dissecting of our assumptions or judgments. In these sessions, we're really trying to look at the economic literacy lens, the systems perspective. And so we're going to show a video. It's about 15 minutes. It's actually clips of a longer video. You're welcome to turn your video camera off if you want to just sit back and listen. I do want to warn you, if you are offended by the F word or other somewhat crass language, I really encourage you to sit with it and listen to the content, because there is some content that may feel offensive to people. So I want to give you that warning. But the content is just unbeatable in understanding bankruptcy from what we found. So we are bringing a John Oliver segment. Again, it's going to last about 15 minutes. And we're just going to ask you to think about bankruptcy, absorb some of the information about the system of bankruptcy. And then, as I said, later in the session, we'll go back to really working with clients and their debts. We're not saying bankruptcy's the solution we want to push everybody towards, but we want to bring with, start with that systems perspective. So we're going to play this video now. All right, that is the end of that video. Hope it was informative. Again, our hope with part of this segment is to think about debt more broadly. And learning about bankruptcy, I think, is one of those pieces. And it's one of the reasons we put it in the financial education standards to make sure that bankruptcy is understood and considered if applicable. But we also need to look at the systemic changes, and the legislation proposed that was mentioned could be a step in creating a more equitable bankruptcy law. So as demonstrated in the opening question we posed today, we all bring personal feelings or assumptions about topics like bankruptcy based on stories we've been told or values we hold. We don't want to discount the role of bankruptcy as an option in some situations, and a first step is not perpetuating the stigma associated with filing bankruptcy. In the asset-specific curriculum, this is a page from that, and we'll be talking about it after the break. We do have a page with a few links to really understand the basics of bankruptcy for communicating to clients. It is a legal process, and so you are not in a role where you should be giving legal advice, but this page helps understand where to send somebody to if that is a necessary conversation for them to have. So we are going to have a Q&A with Demas and Mallory after the break. We're going to show you the asset-specific curriculum in summary, and then we are going to talk about student loan debt as well. So now we are going to send you out to a 10-minute break. So we will come back at 11:05, and we'll see you then. So we're going to continue on for this session to first look at this asset-specific curriculum that the initiative now has that is about debt repayment. So the goal of these curriculums are to provide IDA providers some resources to share with clients, to be a self-directed learning opportunity for clients. While we certainly, encourage coaching and counseling when applicable, we know that not everybody is an expert at all the topics. So we have vehicle purchase, rental, debt repayment, and one more, which I can't remember right now. But they're available on our financial education standards website, and we can give you the link here as well to the debt repayment one. So I'm going to walk us through just really summary what this curriculum looks like. It is available in English and Spanish. And it's available for download and sharing, as well as for your own interest or use as well. So I'm going to walk us through what the curriculum is. So it was created by Warm Springs Community Action Team, and then NP sort of brought it into the IDEA initiative for broader use, open-ended use. So the goal of this course, self-guided course that we have available, is to document and organize all debts in order to make a plan of action, to understand several strategies for paying down debts, and to begin thinking about the future goals. So it was created by the Warm Springs Community Action Team. The other ones have been created by different IDA partners. So I'll just walk you through some of the highlights of the curriculum. There is the CFPB's tool on doing a debt log. So really having people think about all of their different debts and first knowing and organizing their debts. Then there is a video and some reflections on two primary methods of paying down debt, the snowball and the avalanche. And so clients are encouraged to go watch the video and then reflect. Then there's the section on paying down debts. Has a page on student loan debt considerations, your rights with debt collectors, negotiating debt, understanding bankruptcy, comparing your debt, and then making a plan with your IDA. And then when you have debt paid off, a reminder to celebrate that there's accomplishments to be noted. And then the part 3 is planning for the future. So it looks at starting an emergency fund, avoiding high cost credit and loans, warning signs of possible predatory lending, co-signing on loans and some considerations, and then understanding payday loans. And then the last page, the way that we have created these is that the participant completes the packet and then turns in the last page to verify the completion, and they keep the rest. Because it seemed like these should be materials that they get to keep for future reference. So they turn in the last page to verify that they completed it. It's sort of like their certificate of completing asset-specific education. And in Warm Springs, they are using the IDA to help people pay down their debts. So it is one of the approved uses of IDAs, is to pay off debts. And it's just kind of now getting picked up. It used to actually be limited to very specific circumstances, but the Oregon IDA initiative sort of successfully at the state level broadened the idea that debt can be something that somebody can use an IDA for. And so if you are an IDA provider, you can work with, if you're within a network or a standalone, you can offer debt repayment IDAs. And this asset-specific curriculum should help you do the education required. So I'm going to switch now to Q&A. So I don't know if people can see, I don't know, Randy, can you spotlight us? I see everybody's face. I'm not sure if that's what everybody sees, but spotlight the 3 of us that will be speaking. And I'm going to first turn it over to, I'll start with Demas, just to introduce yourself, a little bit about who you are, and then you can pass it to Mallory.
Thank you very much. Luke, my name is Demas Martinez. I work here in the Warm Springs Community Action Team on the Warm Springs and Indian Reservation. I wear a few titles. I'm a small business specialist right now, but I'm also a financial coach, counselor, credit counselor, and housing counselor. So I've been doing this about 5.5 years now, and I've grown into the job. Kind of walked into it with no credit, so I've learned right along with my clients. So it's been fun.
Hi, my name is Mallory Smith. I'm with the Warm Springs Community Action Team as well. I started with the program about 3 years ago. I did a lot of work with youth and stuff like that, and then I kind of moved into the role of the small business portion, and now I'm working a lot with Demas and the financial counseling and stuff like that. Then I will hopefully become the HUD counselor as well. So yeah, thank you guys for being here, and I hope we can all have a good conversation.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you both for joining us. So I'll maybe start with Demas. Our first question is, how do you approach conversations with clients about a vulnerable topic like their debts?
Thanks. I know personally what I do, we come from a smaller community. So typically, we're lucky enough to sometimes know to people. But nonetheless, when it comes to debt and their credit, it's a sensitive topic. So one thing I like to do right from the get-go is just keep an open door policy. Do they want the door closed for that privacy, or do they want to allow it to be open so they feel more safe to go in or out too? So reading body language, for me, a lot of them are apprehensive and scared, so I'm always open-minded to their feelings and try to diffuse it right away with banter or joke, and when we get into the debt and talking about it, just being open-minded about their fear, because a lot of times they're scared. Sometimes they're misinformed, so you're just listening. That's all I do, really, just listening at the beginning and let them talk to me and then just build off that. I'm sorry, I'm having technical difficulties here.
Yeah, no worries. We can hear you and see you fine. So
Okay.
we're good on this end. Mallory, do you want to talk about what's your approach? Is it same, or how do you approach a vulnerable topic?
Yeah, I would say about the same, but I think so. I'm pretty new into this role too, and just like talking about the elephant in the room. Hey, I know you took these steps here. That's really awesome. I know we don't, just kind of knowing our audience too and stuff like that, and making them feel comfortable in a way like you are giving us your personal information. You are doing this, and I know it's a lot, and I know it could be a little daunting, but you are taking those steps, and it's really nice. And I know you don't know me, and just addressing that big elephant in the room and just saying, I know you are providing all your personal information, and I'm here to help. I'm just reassuring them that they're in a safe space. Their stuff will be like put away. No one's going to see them. Just us. It's just us right now, and we're here to help you and stuff like that too.
Great, thank you. And Mallory, I know you're a little newer in coaching clients with debt, but I'm going to keep it with you and then I'll pass it to Demas. But what's your approach to organizing debts? So if somebody needs help organizing, or where you start to identify how to organize if there's various competing debts that somebody has?
I've had it easy so far. Most of the debt that we have locally is small, so it's just prioritizing, what debt they want to pay off first. Typically we look at the one with the highest interest rate. Some people want to look at the one with the biggest amount. Most of my clients are using the IDA to pay off all debt though. And that says a good thing is that, the people are carrying debt locally in the community, but it's not over the IDA amount. I'm not saying that there isn't people out there. There aren't people out there with enormous debt. And when it comes to that, it just basically prioritizing how and what they want to do. I'll just give an example. If they want to buy a home, and then obviously you're going to pay all your debt off, but letting them prioritize and letting them decide and just giving them options is what I do. But again, most of the IDAs that we're doing the debt repayment are covering all the debt they have. So kind of lucky right now.
Great. Mallory, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, it's just going off of what Demas says, reviewing their debt and stuff like that. Probably reviewing their cash flow and seeing what extra income they have, or if we can create any extra income. And then, kind of creating a monthly payment schedule based off of what they can provide in their end and stuff that way. And yeah, I guess having those resources too of the IDA and debt repayment too, but really verifying their debt and their cash flow, and then creating that payment schedule with them based on their
Great.
needs.
Yeah, thank you. So Demas, these next couple questions are a little bit more in the weeds, and maybe I'll pause and say if anybody listening has a question, if you've had curiosity or trouble when you've been helping somebody with that, put it in the chat, please, and I will try and bring it to Demas or Mallory. So Demas, whose job is it to negotiate with a creditor or debt collector? And is it always a good idea to negotiate first?
Those are really good questions there. Whose job is it? Typically, it would be on the responsibility, I think, of the client if they want to, but we're here to help them, and that's what we offer. Most of the time, people have a general idea what their debt is, but they don't know how or go about contacting them. So the ones that do, I have a few that come in already that have called them, negotiated, or just paid it off. The ones we do help, though, I offer it if they don't want to, and most of the time they don't want to, is I'll offer to negotiate for them. So I give them the option. I don't know if it's necessarily a responsibility, but I think it's a responsibility to offer my services, and let me see here. What's the second part of it? Is it always a good idea to negotiate? Yes and no. What I found out recently in negotiating debt is that we did settle for about less than half of what was owed. And the way we went about the conversation, it sounded good with the credit, all that. They made the payment in the office with their card. And then when we read the report later, it didn't reflect the way it was worded. It was negative. It reflected in a negative way. And I understood it because what they did was negotiated bad debt, and they worded it like that. It was not, the full amount was not paid, negotiated, paid as agreed, like we asked. So it was noted and paid as agreed, but then in the same sentence it said that basically we negotiated for lower. So it looked negative the way it was worded. So I do, after that happened, I let clients know that bureaus and creditors may word it in the comments that you didn't pay the full amount. So I now what I'm doing is giving them not necessarily options, but explaining how it looks on a credit report when you're paying something off. It always looks better if you pay the full amount off like you promised. So I'm not taking the negotiation tactic out of there, but because it's still available for clients, because we all know debt is bought and sold, and sometimes several times over. So I don't feel bad about it, but what I did feel bad about was the wording that the creditor actually put in there. So it looked like they didn't pay, like what they say, and that's true too, because we negotiated. But so what I would do now is coach, and I am coaching and telling them that if you want it to look and reflect good on it, you're going to want to pay the full amount off. So, or negotiate if you want, because sometimes people, they have that 7,200 and they need to get it under that amount, so they will negotiate. But most of them are doing it on their own now. It's kind of good to hear them come in, and they have not just Credit Karma, but they, they're enrolled in Experian or TransUnion, and they know it's on their actual credit report, and they'll bring it in, and it shows, that they did pay it. So I think more people are being educated. I don't know if it's us or them, but nonetheless, we have more and more clients coming in with them already paying what's on the credit report. So it's good to know that we have clients that are further along than others, and you could see and hear it when you're talking to them. Like I called these people and I talked to them and I paid it and I got it taken care of. Accomplishment. So one thing I always do, is give them that praise, give them kudos, give them a heads up, say, great job, look where you are, look where you've come from. You can see the change in the credit score. They feel happy, and you validate it. So
Great, thank you. Mallory, this question isn't on our list, but bring in one. What is the role of a credit report in kind of working with people through their debt? So do you all pull credit for your clients, and then how does that inform understanding the debt or conversations with them about the debt. So where does credit report overlap with your work with clients?
I think it overlaps a lot, you know. We do work with a lot of housing folks and folks wanting cars and things like that too. So, I would say the more I'm getting into this and the more I'm doing it, I think it's really important to let people know where they stand in their credit too, and let them understand their credit score and what goes into it and why and stuff like that too. So I just think it's really important overall in what we're doing. So, you know, we want to help stabilize them financially and stuff too, and understand what it is in their credit report. So if I'm getting that right.
Yeah, thank you. Demas, what about fines and fees?
That's a cool one to talk about. I know I've from personal experience and then working with a couple other clients. When I took this job on, one of the first things I did was had somebody pull my credit report. And lo and behold, there was a fine on there from Hood River County. I was trying to get my license back. Unfortunately, I wasn't licensed. My director took a chance, said, hey, you have 60 days to get your license. So I pulled the credit report. I found out that Hood River County did report fines, and it went to collections. In trying to get my license back, I found out that I knew I had fines in Jefferson County, which is adjacent to Hood River County, and they did not report my fines to creditors. So each county is different on reporting fines, whether traffic. I'm not sure about child support. I have not had a client that had child support on there except one, and it was from Alaska. So as for fines and fees, what can be done, and most recently what has been done, and I got notified in the mail, was that it was Governor Brown had forgiven a lot of fines back in December. So what most people don't know now is that their fines are probably certain fines have been forgiven, and most of those fines are traffic and non-criminal. So if they've had DWSs or non-payment of insurance or proof of insurance, most likely those fines have been forgiven. On the flip side of it, what I did when I got hired over 5 years ago was I went through the Department of Revenue, which is called the Oregon Relicensing Program. And what it is, it's a program that's available for people with suspended license or fines from traffic infractions, non-criminal. So that's the most important thing about it. It's for non-criminal fines. You know, if you got a DWI or revoked or something like that, that's criminal, it's not going to work. You can enroll in the program, and what they do is you have to pull all fines from the state of Oregon and give them a list of it, and then they kind of verify it with their database, and then you enter an agreement and you have to put $200 down. And what it is just a basic agreement with the Department of Revenue that you're going to pay on these fines for starting out for $50 a month, and then after 6 months they review your case, they look at your income, how you've paid your fines, and there's no late payments whatsoever. If you're late, they suspend you. So there's no second chances or anything like that. You got to make your payment. So if you skip, and this is what they warn me, if you skip a payment, they'll suspend you. It doesn't make you ineligible for the program. What they do is they make you put $400 down and then restart the payment. So I was one of the lucky ones, I think, and I'm glad this program was available for me. You know, again, my director took the chance and said, hey, we'll hire you, but you need to get it done. I got it done real quick. It was a huge accomplishment for me. I think, you know, it gave me hope. But nonetheless, when it comes to fines, you're going to want to look at different counties. I don't know about the western side of the state if those counties report. So I'm not sure if you guys have pulled reports and have seen court fines in there. So that's what can be done with that. Fines cannot be negotiated. I tried it. They're going to want all their money. So when they're sent to collections, there's no negotiation on a fine either. I tried. My fine was only like $40, you know, but no, they wanted the whole amount. So as far as I know, fines and fees are non-negotiable when it comes to creditor collections.
Thank you. Yeah, so fines and fees are, the thing in the way for a client, that's definitely something for you all as providers to look in with them. Getting that out of the way can be, open a door for the next opportunity. Mallory, how would you help an IDA saver prioritize which debts to pay off first? So if you have a limited amount of IDA funds that you're helping somebody pay towards their debt, how would you help them prioritize?
I think that's where we really play our counselor role. So we put on that hat. We have to like sit down, really go over their debt and see where they're at and stuff like that. See where they're at financially, but also see where they're at in value wise. What are their values? What are they willing to like? Almost like if they not able to pay off the monthly debt, what can we do to help you find that monthly, that more cash flow, that that income that help you. So prioritizing it is just that way, values, I feel like play a whole role in that. And so you can have to create a monthly schedule for them that fits their needs and stuff that way. So it's that, to me, it's that real counselor hat. You have to providing tools and stuff too. There's apps that can help you really prioritize what monthly debt you want to do through the IDA and stuff like that too. You just have to have those more tools and resources to also provide as well beyond just the IDA and stuff that way too. So I think that's for me and the way I see it going into that. So
Great, thank you. So I put the link to the curriculum that I had showed pieces of. If anybody else has questions in the chat, we have about 5 more minutes. I do have one I'm going to bring into the chat, but first I'm going to ask another question to Demas. How do you use the curriculum that you all created, the helping somebody pay down their debts? How do you use that? So just an example of when do you give it to somebody? What do you look for when they complete it? Just talk us through a little bit about how you use that curriculum.
That's a great question there. How I use it, basically, we give it a take home, but they're also, they meet with me for a half hour, and we pull a report and we compare what's on there. And most of the time they'll start filling out the paperwork and they'll start prioritizing themselves. If not, they'll talk with me about it again. Luckily most of the debt is under the IDA amount, but nonetheless, there are times when they want to pay something off first. So we discuss it together, and typically it's the one with the biggest amount. So having them look at that curriculum and put it in order of the amounts or the percentages helps a lot. Typically the IDA, the curriculum that we're using helps them with the videos. I know they like the videos a lot because it gives them something to watch and feel. Sometimes they can't or don't have time to meet with me, so they get to see and watch some videos, and it helps them a little bit. And then I think about 4 or 5 have commented on the predatory lending too, and it helped them talk to other family members that they're trying to help, to avoid the payday lending. So it has educated some people already, especially with that. I'm glad to hear clients sharing that, they're trying to help younger people, tell them to stay away from, the payday lenders. So the curriculum has helped and is developed, but I think the most beneficial tool in it, for at least for us on our part, is allowing them to see the amounts and the percentages and go from there, so.
Great, thank you. So if anybody else has questions in the chat, I'm going to read one, but it's actually one that I think I can answer. So IDAs can be used to fund a small business, higher education, or a first-time home, right? Those are the 3 traditional kind of original IDA asset goals. Did Demas say that IDAs can be used to pay your debts? The answer is yes. So in Oregon, IDAs began expanding a little over 10 years ago beyond those 3 primary classes. So added to that were vehicle, which we have an asset-specific curriculum for now. Eventually, also home repair and assistive technology. I think we're added around kind of also in that earlier time frame. And then over the years, it's grown. So our program is directed by the Oregon statute on IDAs, and they have added rental. We have an asset-specific curriculum for rental. They've added debt, which is what we're speaking to today. They've added retirement savings, which we also have an asset-specific curriculum available for now, and emergency savings. So you've seen the last 2 years, that was the most recent one, where all of a sudden we're like, hey, IDAs can actually just go to somebody for emergency financial needs or their future emergency savings. So we have expanded flexibility. And if you want to offer debt repayment IDAs, you have to talk to whoever administers your money. So again, if you're in a network with CASA, talk with CASA about piloting debt repayment IDAs. Or if you're in a network with Dev Northwest, talk with Dev Northwest. If you're a fiduciary organization, you work directly with us on piloting. We don't want people to go blind into these fields because it is, as you've heard from Demas and Mallory, there are ins and outs that we want people to be prepared for if you're going to help somebody pay down their debts. Or repair their home or buy their home, right? There are asset-specific needs that providers have to demonstrate the ability to support clients. But these asset-specific curriculums are intended to make that easier for you all to sort of plug and play the education for that goal that you want to help offer to your clients. So that is an option available to people. We also are soliciting kind of by next Monday, the goal is to get curriculums for home repair and post-secondary education so that we can also have asset-specific self-guided curriculum. So if your organization offers something that you think is really great and you want to make it available to the IDA initiative, that's kind of next in our queue we want to make available. Demas or Mallory, let's give you each some closing thoughts. And then we're going to wrap up. So we really appreciate your time. Anything else you want to add to the conversation before we move on?
All I'll add is that we've had a ton of home buyers that did a home buyer education, and in pulling a report, they've decided to asset change, get the debt repayment, and line up the debt before they buy the home. So it's a great tool for them people that wanted to buy a home and they know they have debt that could be substantial, to let them use the debt repayment and then the allowable period to reapply for IDA and then use the home ownership. So that's what we're finding out with most of our debt repayment clients are looking to buy a home in the next few years. So if you don't have it, I think it's a great asset builder to help your clients.
Thank you. Mallory?
Yeah, I would just second that. There's that pattern there too, and the debt repayment is an awesome tool. And I would totally see if any organization can really hop onto that too. So it's really helpful. I use the debt repayment myself, and it was really helpful for me too. So thanks.
Awesome. Thank you both for being here, for sharing. And people can give a virtual snaps or claps. And we're gonna move on. I think next up is Randy. So I'm gonna share my slides again here, and we'll continue our conversation here.
All right. Just trying to get oriented. All right. Jumping in here to trust. And to Luke's point, continue to send love and snap to Demas and Mallory in the virtual space. But jumping back in, economic literacy is a lens we keep returning to in these financial education sessions. One we're trying to enhance and to enroll to support the work that we do with savers. And it calls us to zoom out to see the macro level issues and systems that are harming individuals and communities that we walk alongside. And when we look at debts, we have an opportunity to ask why, like why they're becoming necessary for clients to have them. And this understanding doesn't make the debt go away, but it builds empathy, and empathy builds trust. And a lot of the work we do is rooted and grounded in trust, because the work we do is grounded in relationships. So it allows us to kind of think of that question of what do you do with the information from someone you don't trust? We often don't listen to it. And because we're in the business of relationships and trust, it's necessary as a starting point to engage with clients as it relates to managing their debts.
So one uncomfortable truth is that as a society, we've accepted the outcome that people who work low-wage jobs may not be able to meet their basic needs. An acceptance that some workers are undeserving of a dignified life. There's always going to be jobs that don't require a degree because we create a demand for those goods and services. But must a service worker be required to work multiple jobs to meet their basic needs? When we advise people who work in low-wage jobs to seek higher paying position or to get a degree to advance, we aren't addressing systemic problems. And the next person we serve will likely be in a similar situation. Focusing solely on individual effort traps both our clients and ourselves in a never-ending cycle of plugging holes in a ship that was never designed to stay afloat. A dominant American narrative is that if individuals follow a particular path, like getting a bachelor's degree, they'll find a success. But even the promise of a degree has turned out to be an albatross for many who borrowed to go to school in the last 30 years. In the era of declining wages and the rising cost of living, getting a college degree has been touted as a key to securing a stable future for yourself and your family, both through increased income and wealth. No doubt, completing higher education often results in increased lifetime earnings, particularly for white people. But you can see in the slide that a white person without a bachelor's degree on average still accumulates more wealth than a Black or Latinx person with a bachelor's degree. Let me say that again so it sinks in. A white person without a degree on average still accumulates more wealth than a Black or a Latinx person with a degree. We're going to focus next on what happened that made it necessary to take on debt to pursue a higher education. In 2022, nearly 44 million people were holding $1.76 trillion in student debt, more than twice the amount outstanding in 2008, which was $600 billion. Student debt is the fastest source of household debt in the US, but the burden is not equal. According to the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis, more than 84% of college-educated Black households in their 30s have student debt, compared with 35% 3 decades ago. That debt burden is a median of $44,000, up from $6,000. Only 53% of white graduates in that age bracket have student debt. A big factor in the debt burden being shouldered by Black college graduates is their overrepresentation at predatory for-profit colleges that charge high tuition, encourage students to take loans, and have low graduation rates. For-profit colleges account for half of all student loan defaults. According to the U.S. Department of Education, in the 1965-66 school year, the average 4-year degree cost was $607. That's the total cost for 4 years of college. That number adjusted for inflation is $5,625. For a 2-year degree, it was even less, $203, adjusted for inflation, $1,800.81. These numbers are excluding room and board. Today, the average cost of tuition and fees for a public in-state 4-year degree is $43,760. Tuition and fees for a 2-year degree is $7,720. When we add in room and board, books, supplies, travel, and other expenses, it becomes evident that the per year cost of attendance is out of reach for many families without taking on debt. The slide shows that a 4-year in-state college costs about $28,000, while a private college costs over $57,000. Experts have blamed the rising tuition on everything from administrative bloat to increased availability of grants and loans to campus construction booms. But a study by Demos has shown that these factors are minor contributors to tuition increases. Up until the 90s, state funding ensured public college tuition remained within reach for most middle-class families, and the financial aid provided extra support to ensure lower-income students could afford the cost of college. This slide shows that in both research universities and master's and bachelor's universities, over 3/4 of the increase of tuition comes from the withdrawal of public funding. State higher education funding on a per-student basis is lower today than it was in 1980. Additionally, federal financial aid no longer provides grants robust enough to defray the rising cost of college. The Pell Grant once covered 7 out of every $10 in college costs, but as of 2014, it covered only 3 out of $10 needed to attend a public college or university.
So in her book, The Sum of Us, Heather McGee highlights the various investments made by the government and others, and offers an analysis of what has changed in the last 40 years. So higher education has historically been seen as a public good, and education feeds innovation, which drives the economic engine. So in the 1860s in the US, the government offered the states over 10 million acres of land taken from indigenous people to build on or to sell for institutions of higher education. More free federal money for higher education came from the GI Bill. And in 1947, white veterans made up 50% of the US college admissions. So many of the country's biggest and most respected public colleges were tuition free, from City University in New York to the UC system in California. And in 1980, students of color comprised just under 17% of the college population. Now that number is about 40%. So over this same period, state legislators drastically cut what they spent per student on their public colleges. And even as the taxable income base in the state grew, by 2017, the majority of state colleges were relying on student tuition dollars for the majority of their expenses. So the average public college tuition has nearly tripled since 1991, resulting in skyrocketing student debt. The rising cost of college feels to most Americans like so many aspects of our economy, unexplained and unavoidable. But the combination of the federal government slowly shifting its financial aid from grants that didn't have to be repaid to federal loans and states cutting significant spending for public colleges coincided during a time of rising resentment of immigration and demographic changes. So older, wealthier, and whiter political majority began voting for ballot initiatives opposing civil rights, fair housing, immigration, and taxes. So the result of this massive disinvestment is a crippling debt load that is keeping people from buying homes, getting married, having kids, and starting businesses, and saving for retirement. So the fate of President Biden's loan forgiveness program is in the hands of the Supreme Court. However, even with loan forgiveness, the underlying problem of affordability remains. In the US, recent policy proposes to restore free college life. So the Oregon Promise, for example, is generally popular, even though its race component shapes public opinion. There's a 30% gap in support for the free college between white folks at 53%, Black folks at 83%, and Latinx identifying folks at 82%. So the most fiercely opposed are the very people who benefited most from the largely white-only free college model: older, college-educated, white Republicans.
We're grateful that Warm Springs Community Action Team was willing to share their curriculum with us. It supports our clients' efforts to formulate a plan to get out of debt. These are critical coaching and counseling tools formulated by years of wisdom and best practices. We hope you'll refer to them and modify them to suit your own clients. As you move forward in this work, it's important to keep asking questions about how our present debt situation is shaped by the powers that we don't often see. Educational debt is just one example of debt created by public disinvestment, which shifts the cost to people who can least afford it. We need to look critically at why people are having to take on debt and why ordinary individuals are demonized for filing bankruptcy, but high-profile celebrities and corporations are considered strategic when they use the legal options. For example, we can apply this inquiry to another significant source of debt, car ownership. Some of the questions you might consider exploring are, what are the messages we're sold about car ownership? If you think all the way back, like if you've ever seen some of those old school, like black and white commercials about cars and how they're like your key to freedom and you're, like if you have a car, you're free to go anywhere you need to go. So there's this very inherently American message about linking car ownership to freedom, which perpetuates like this public pushback against investment in public transit and other like communal ways to get around. But other questions you might consider is like how car ownership burdens low-income people, how one like broken car or one ticket can throw someone's life that they're just barely scraping by to total utter chaos. So the questions about public investments or divestments that were made to make car ownership necessary. I'm sure it's always going to be necessary in rural areas. But we should think about who benefits from these investments or divestments. We encourage you to keep veering off the well-worn path, focusing solely on individual effort, to keep working on creating those new pathways to understanding the underlying systems that affect all of us, not just the people we work with.
All right, so that brings us to the end of our session. We have 10 minutes that we will just offer back to you on a beautiful sunny day, at least in Portland it is. But before we go, I'll have Randy paste in the evaluation. We want to hear from you about your experience with this session and feedback that informs future sessions. We do have one more in this series of 3 that we're doing kind of this spring. That'll be topic 9 and 10, which is understanding taxes and investing to achieve goals. So if you haven't been following all the way through, we started at topic 1. We have recordings for all the other ones. If you want to catch something you missed or kind of revisit any of those older topics, we'll be doing one more and then we'll break for the summer and return to another session in the fall. So please give us feedback. We'll follow up with the link to the video. We'll follow up with any of the resources we shared. And we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and a good warm weekend coming up.
If you fight them unless you won't die. I say water no get enemy. I say water no get enemy. Oh me you love oh me you love